Let's go on to our next very exciting session, which is on trending Chandigarh and Jaipur as hot markets to invest. So let me introduce our moderator for the session. Session will be moderated by Mr. Amit Goenka, MD and CEO, Nisus Finance Services. Mr. Goenka brings over 21 years of diversified, top-tier multinational experience in investments, asset management, advisory, and strategy. And he has transacted and managed over $7 billion of assets globally, including nearly $1 billion of India real estate assets. He was also the founder and MD of SL Finance, and Amit consults various industry bodies like ASSOCHAM, Meritco, IMC, etc. Let me introduce our speakers in an alphabetical order. Let me welcome Mr. Akshay Taneja, Managing Director, TDI Infratech Limited. Mr. Taneja has been spearheading TDI and is responsible for the group's strategic planning and management, and he has been diversifying into the sectors of F&B and hospitality, as well as education. As the youngest member of CREDAI, Akshay is directly engaged in empowering middle-income groups and endorsing affordable housing in India. Our next panel member, let me introduce Ankita Sood, Director and Head of Research, RIA India. Ankita has over a decade of experience in real estate consulting, research, and strategic advisory. She, along with micro-market analysis, engages in macroeconomic associations like consumer spending, socioeconomic spending patterns to draw a holistic picture of the demand and supply dynamics in the sector. Our next eminent panel member is Mr. Pankaj Kapoor, founder and MD, Liases Foras Real Estate Rating and Research Private Limited. Mr. Kapoor has more than 20 years of experience in the field of valuation, consulting, and risk analytics. He's an acclaimed expert in analyzing and predicting real estate market trends in India, and is best known in the industry for bringing in scientific approach and for developing reliable market database. Our final member, let me introduce Mr. Uddhav Poddar, Managing Director and Group CEO, Bhumika Group. Uddhav Poddar has spun off from the family business and established Bhumika Group, which has attained many successes in a short span of time. He is in ASSOCHAM, he is the National Co-Chairman of the National Council on Ease of Doing Business and a member of the Management Committee for the second consecutive year. He is the founding member of SCAI, Shopping Center Association of India, and is the Area Director for Entrepreneurs Organization for Southeast Asia region. So this is our eminent panel for this discussion. Let me hand it over to Mr. Goenka to take forward the conversation.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry for that. And again, thank you very much, Sapna, for making this happen for all of us. I think it's been a wonderful afternoon discussing very, very interesting and relevant topics. And another heated conversation after the face-off between Noida and Gurgaon. You're asking another face-off between Chandigarh and Jaipur. You know, what a coincidence. You know, we have to decide which is the city to go after. But I don't think there is any comparison. I think every city has got its own opportunity sets, and Jaipur and Chandigarh are no different. So without further ado, with the interesting and knowledgeable panelists that we have this afternoon, let me jump right into the bevy of things by inviting our research experts first, starting with Pankaj on his views on the opportunities in the cities, as well as the impact of pandemic that has happened between Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. Pankaj, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amit, and always pleasure connecting with you and everyone over here. Real estate market has actually really bounced back, and almost all cities have seen a good recovery. And the way we have seen the Tier 2 cities had the lesser impact of the COVID, and so as the recovery also has been much closer to what used to be pre-pandemic time. So in comparison to Tier 1 to Tier 2 cities, the recovery has been very, very good. But some interesting data points which I want to really mention from last 6 to 7 years times, where we cover close to 60 cities in India, in which there are 8 major cities where the population is more than 40 lakhs, like you consider Pune, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai, NCR. And then there are other 52 small Tier 2 cities. So you see the contribution of Tier 2 cities used to be 21 to 22% of all India builder sales. I'm talking about in the period of 2015-16. which has grown to become 29%. So what we have seen over a period of time, the contribution of tier 2 cities has been increasing throughout. And the way I'm seeing that it is going to really increase further also going forward. And two reasons for it is that we see the spatial economy distributions, which is more conducive for the smaller cities because labors are more available in these particular cities, land costs comparatively much lower, and the way the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign or work from home culture, remote working space, opportunity which is emerging, I see we are going to really see the spatial diffusions of the jobs. And because of that, you would find lesser migration to tier 1 cities, and tier 2 cities are slated to really grow. Apart from that, like PMAY, CLSS schemes, and many other incentives the government has really provided has really helped tier 2 cities quite a lot. So overall sense, as you said that tier 2 cities story is now really being written. I know when post liberalizations, when the money started coming by at that point in times, we were really counting on the tier 2 cities. That's where the Mihan projects, Nagpur, many other tier 2 cities investment got attracted, and then it got faded off, and then majority of the chunk of the money started moving to tier 1 cities. Now I think the tier 1 cities virtually reaching to a kind of a saturation positions, and tier 2 cities have their own positions which is coming by, and it's production driven real estate market. And in that sense, I see there are good opportunity emerging in tier 2 cities, and these two cities, Chandigarh and Jaipur, really stands in the top 10 cities in India. So in terms of comparison point of view, these are the market which are really doing quite good.
Absolutely, Pankaj, and I would completely agree and supplement you on that. In fact, Jaipur is on its way to becoming a mega city, as we know, by 2025, with a population of more than 10 million, has seen some fantastic trajectory, especially in the last, I think, 12 to 18 months, with affordable housing, with a number of commercial developments, SEZs, and so on and so forth. It's obviously been one of the go-to places when it comes to retail and hospitality, being given its proximity to Delhi. Of course, it enjoys that benefit of being close to Delhi, and so is Chandigarh, having the same advantage of its proximity to Delhi, and therefore, gives a huge amount of fillip to people who are looking at work, play, and entertainment. Coming into Chandigarh. Of course, Chandigarh we refer to as the Tri-City. So when we're talking of Chandigarh, obviously we're talking of Chandigarh, Panchkula, and Mohali, effectively becoming one of the fastest growing region, micro markets within the NCR region. With that in mind, I would like to go to Ankita, who obviously again is a research expert and is able to provide us your thoughts on what are the other growth trajectories for the city, what are the infrastructure drivers. We all know that infrastructure, and we just talk about Jewar being one of the potential drivers for Noida. What are the drivers for these two cities, Ankita, and what do you see as the consumer and market trends emerging for these two cities, which is going to invite new capital to get invested and new development opportunities to come into these cities?
Thank you, Amit. And I will actually pick up from where Pankaj has left. Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, thank you for taking out the time to be with us on this Saturday afternoon. We are discussing a very important structural shift that we've seen in the real estate space, that post-pandemic has become the talk of all conferences. That are the tier 2 cities there? Are they emerging? I'd rather say they were already there. Just that the spotlight or the focus has come back to these cities. I would call these cities as emerging cities. Chandigarh Tri-City, Jaipur in the north, they've garnered a lot of investment interest across sectors. Several policy initiatives, in the past, infrastructure initiatives such as JNNURM in the past, Amrut, Smart City Mission, Udan, the Nav Nirman scheme, they've all accelerated the growth prospects and have contributed to the socio-economic development of these cities. Coupled with this, the expansion of the service sector, that's the most important, has actually increased disposable income in these cities. The customer base is more evolved and is more informed, and that has actually fueled the market share of these cities across consumption baskets. And obviously, real estate is one of the consumption baskets. For instance, e-commerce and luxury car sales across these cities, Chandigarh, Jaipur, Guwahati, the market share of the luxury car segment, has, I wouldn't name the company, but has gone up to 25%. On housing.com, if I talk about our portal, in the last 1 year, the online search volume of Chandigarh Tri-City and Jaipur has actually been trending. Chandigarh is at the top of our index for the last 4 months. That means more and more people are searching to buy a house online. The search and discovery across these two cities has been phenomenal. Infrastructure, we will talk about that more in detail further, but absolutely great connectivity. Chandigarh is it's the entry to North, Punjab, proximity. That's why the Chandigarh Tri-City is a buzz right now with the coming up of, it was already there, but the airport, Jaipur airport, we've seen the passenger traffic double over the past 5 years. So absolutely strategically located. And all of this service sector contribution and the connectivity is actually bringing the spotlight back to these cities. And, taking from where Pankaj left, I'd see that these cities are becoming as strong alternates to the tier 1 cities. In planning, we have a theory as counter magnet towns. So they are no more towns now. They are going to be alternate to the tier 1 cities.
Absolutely, Ankita. I think you've really brought out the fact that both Jaipur and Chandigarh International Airport have been seeing significant growth in volumes,
Right.
becoming very significant hubs, both for passenger and commercial traffic. And I think that's obviously one of the drivers. What is also interesting is that these cities are not just seen as affordable housing centers, but also seen as centers for large-scale villa development to large-scale plotted developments of high values. I've seen even 5 crore plots being sold in Chandigarh. So clearly, it's not just an affordable housing alternative to a Gurgaon, maybe. So coming right at you, Akshay, who's been spearheading TDI's initiatives in the NCR region, what are the exciting opportunities you see with these two cities, and how do you see the growth opportunities coming out both for yourselves as well as for investors who want to ride the wave with you?
So firstly, thank you for having me here. It's always a great pleasure to get connected with Realty Plus. The sessions are always uplifting and learning about other parts of the city and of the country. When you talk about Chandigarh Tri-City area, I've been working there for the past about 7-8 years now. I've never seen such a boom, such a excitement in the customer aura, the kind of leads that we are getting from, be it online portals, offline portals, and the kind of footfalls that we are getting. Now, there are multiple factors adding to it. One is obviously the government schemes in the past 2-3 years, be it CCLS, be it PMAY, revising the circle rates of the area. Though those all schemes are supported by the government, but I would also say that Chandigarh is very strategically located. All the 4 states around it, Punjab, Jammu, Leh now being a UT, Himachal Pradesh, and Kashmir. So all these states are adding, and all these UTs are coming down to Chandigarh to have a base there. Apart from being the gateway to Punjab, and how Punjab is being promoted by its industry, its tourism, its education. The traffic has, as Ankita rightly said, the past 3-4 years, it's as is Jaipur that the traffic has doubled in the airport. Same is the case here. And also, I don't consider any other city as a competition, be it Delhi, be it Jaipur or Gurgaon, or even Panchkula to Mohali. The more the merrier. We all one part of a country, and if one sector grows, the other sector automatically grows. There is collateral growth, I would say. So if there is growth in Gurgaon, be it being the powerhouse, as good as Delhi or above Delhi or below Delhi, all are the same. So every sector grows and it takes the other sector along. In Mohali recently, there were about 200 projects launched in the past 3 years. And I don't see, maybe 1 or 2% of the projects might not be doing well because of administration issues. But there is no other bottleneck or a hassle which is stopping the growth of projects. In the recent 2 months, if you talk about coming to the recent time, Amit University has launched, they have announced a project there. I hear it is not announced yet, but Medanta Hospital is also looking to expand and open a hospital, a 100-acre hospital in the Tri-City. Apart from, I'm sure everyone on this panel knows ITC, Procter Gambler, Tata Steel, Hero Motocorp, all these, Dabur, all of them already have a base in the Tri-City as an industrial hub. So the growth potential and the trajectory is only upward from here. Uh, One more thing I would like to add in the past 1 year about the rate, the rate revision and the price rise that has happened in the property prices. Multiple factors again, increase in the construction cost, increase in the demand, increase in inflation, somewhat you can say. But I would say in the next 1 year, the growth will happen, but we should be cautious that such growth will not be there. It will be 10 to 15% growth, but the property boom, it's always healthy to have a property boom, but not something which can go up to inflationary levels. So expect a 10 to 15% growth in every city, at least in the top 10 cities of the country, there will be growth.
Akshay, I mean, you mentioned about the drivers being education, healthcare, maybe manufacturing for, let's say, Chandigarh, or the Tri-City area. But specifically coming down to your company and the real estate trends, what kind of developments do you think specifically are happening? Is it more affordable housing, or are people looking at data centers or warehousing or commercial parks? What are the key development drivers from a real estate perspective that you see happening in the next, next 3 to 5 years? And what are you focusing on in terms of the trends in the city?
Well, we are into affordable housing in other parts of the country, in Haryana and in Gurgaon, but I would not say that I had the opportunity to launch any affordable housing schemes in Punjab, because the kind of area that we are in, Mohali per se, the rates are too high. They are not sustainable for affordable housing. So, as in Haryana, it's defined to between 4 to 5,000 square feet. The going rates of group housing project here range up to 8,000 rupees per square feet. That naturally bottles down to the rate of the land. So the rate of the land does not support in the core area that we are in on the international airport road, just 15 kilometers from it. The land rates do not support either affordable housing or warehousing. So what we as a company are projecting and launching in the next 2 to 3 years, we are acquiring projects only solely for commercial basis. So how you see in Gurgaon, the golf course and golf course extension road, you will not see a affordable housing project on the golf course road, or a warehousing project on the golf course road. You'll have to traject to maybe 20-30 kilometers away from it. Where we are situated, we are launching hardcore commercial projects. We are tying up with who's and who's about in the industry, which take up spaces for lease and for office spaces is one thing which is coming up in a very good way there, because the average rentals range from, you can say, between 70 to 80 to 90 rupees. Now that does not sustain warehousing, which ranges from 15 to 25 rupees, or affordable housing in which the rates are again lower than what the market commands here. So commercial boom is one thing which is really driving the market. If you see GMADA, which is the local authority, Greater Mohali Development Authority, whenever they do an auction, they fetch about 30, 25, 30 crore rupees per acre for a commercial land site. And even for residential, they go up to approximately the same price, between 15 and 18 crore rupees, which is very high. So residential, premium housing and commercial is what the area is looking for right now.
Fantastic. I mean, I think that brings us obviously into what you really mentioned, which is what we had discussed, was the demand for commercial developments and specifically office spaces. We've seen a great amount of boom when it comes to co-working, for startups, for e-commerce, and a number of other such things actually now happening out of Chandigarh and not necessarily Bangalore, as we think being the only epicenter for just for such developments. Now coming to you, Uddhav, you've also spent time looking at cities within Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and we are obviously talking about Jaipur and Chandigarh today. What are your experiences and views when it comes to the developments like hospitality or other retail and alternate developments which are drivers for these cities?
Hi, Amit. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for Realty Plus. We are basically doing developments mostly in Rajasthan, and we are focused more on the commercial side, on retail, office, hospitality, service apartments. Of course, we are exploring residential opportunities as well. So I'd like to speak specifically on Jaipur because I don't have much experience on Punjab. And I'd like to first state what I think are the positives on Jaipur and what then subsequently what I think is driving. So I think it's an upcoming metro city. It's got fantastic connectivity, whether it's road, rail or air. Of course, DMIC and Delhi-Mumbai Expressway both cross Jaipur. So that's a big advantage. It's a safe environment and a good industrial environment as well. Also, you see a stable political environment you don't see in Rajasthan, even if the parties in power change, that the policies change. Policies generally remain stable, which is very positive for investors. The education and medical ecosystem is very good. It's of course very close to NCR, like someone mentioned. It has an upcoming IT industry. And just to give you a perspective on industry, RICO, which is the nodal body for industrial land, was selling about 300 crores of land about 5-6 years back. Last year, it was 3,000 crores. And this year, they're targeting 6,000 crores. So that's the kind of sale of industrial lands coming into Rajasthan. So that shows that industry is pumping in money into Rajasthan. And if industry comes in, automatically everything around it, starts booming. So these are the small points I'd like to add about Jaipur. Of course, on the kind of development, of course, residential is doing well. Even in Jaipur, in good locations, you are fetching rates of 8,000 to 10,000 rupees a square foot. But still, I think what's lacking in Jaipur, if you ask me, is that none of the large A-grade developers of the country have come into Jaipur. So the quality of development still isn't the best, but they're still fetching those rates. Even on retail commercial, there's huge demand. But again, there is no real large development in Jaipur. I'm doing a large one in Udaipur, 1 million square feet, phase 1. But there's no large 2 million square feet commercial retail in Jaipur till now. We're scouting for land, of course. So, but there is huge demand. The retailers want space, but there is a shortage of space. IT is picking up. Co-working, like you said, is really picking up. There's huge demand for co-working. Banking is doing well over there. BPO is again an industry which is doing well. So general demand for office is good. Warehousing again is a good demand in the outskirts of Jaipur towards the Ajmer Road. There is a huge warehousing space coming up, and you see the likes of Flipkart, Amazon, and all of these companies taking up large spaces over there. There's a new asset class I would like to say is hotel apartments and hospitality suites, which like you would see in Dubai or other parts of the world, which are being sold in Rajasthan, because of course hospitality is a key industry in Rajasthan. So individual investors are investing in these kind of asset classes and leasing it back to the operator for a revenue share or a rental income, which is now really picked up in Rajasthan. Also studio apartments, which I was surprised to see, studio and service apartments in the last 2 years in Jaipur have really picked up, because you have the BPO industries and all of those industries doing well. So people who are renting out these studios, so it becomes a good source of secondary income. This is in short my perspective.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. I think you brought back Jaipur into focus while Akshay was talking about Chandigarh in the Tri-City area. I think Jaipur again has suddenly come into the limelight. It was earlier just Mahindra SEZ, which was one of the largest developments from a commercial perspective, which is not just stabilized, but is now actually growing itself out. But also from the residential perspective, we've seen enough growth and appreciation when it comes to suburban locations like Tonk Road or Jagatpura or even Mansarovar extension, actually seeing increase in prices, which were actually very flat or stable for some time. I actually started seeing an uptick in values. What is interesting is that because of the co-working, because of some of the things that you mentioned, the average buying age has actually come down in Jaipur. It was not supposed to be a young guy city. It's actually looking like that 28 to 45 years of people are actually going and buying into Jaipur. And I think maybe the pandemic and work from home and co-working and other things that Pankaj mentioned and could be some of the drivers of why younger population is going back to their states or the cities and looking at buying stock there. So, coming back to you, Ankita, given that the data that you have from housing and some of the research that you do, what are the, what is the typical ticket size and what are the buying preferences? Is it different for Jaipur versus Chandigarh, or typically it's the same, or are the same? Do you see the similar trends for both the cities, or there are different, there are different segments of people who actually go to the A city versus the other city?
Sure, Amit. So both the cities, in terms of the price points, very interestingly, we would think that these are tier 2 cities, but the sweet spot or maximum search volumes are in the price bracket of 50 lakh to 1 CR. That's not even the case with the, let's say our tier 1 cities, so to say, the seat administrative capitals, say for example, Ahmedabad. So 50 lakhs to 1 crore is mostly the searched filter that the property buyers are looking at. And when I come to Chandigarh, like Akshay said, is very interesting because it's not only Chandigarh, it's the Tri-City. You have Zirpur, that's a different ballgame altogether. And you have Punjab, you have Himachal. So all of those people are wanting to take place in Mohali or Chandigarh Tri-City area, right? If I come to Jaipur, we're seeing an online trend of people searching for the 3 BHK configuration. So when we say that people are looking for larger houses, so that's what's happening in Jaipur. So, how do I place it? That's search and discovery. So once somebody is searching online, you take close to 3 to 6 months to actually dwell on that search. You actually go on ground. So these indicators or the index that we track is a leading indicator of where the potential demand is going to be there. And Chandigarh, the dynamics of it, we've seen, a lot of home buyers from Himachal who are looking for properties in Zirpur, Derabasi areas, etc. So yes, the market is absolutely buzzing right now, especially the Chandigarh Tri-City area.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So clearly, I think Chandigarh is looking like a winner here, given that it's obviously a larger impact zone, as you mentioned, and there are obviously a lot of benefits coming its way. Pankaj, what kind of asset classes? We've heard most of our friends here talk about, larger homes, luxury housing, maybe larger units, not just the affordable housing. And clearly, given the values at which land is being sold, I don't think it is lending itself to affordable housing, especially the key suburbs or locations within these cities. But apart from that, any other asset classes that you see really coming up, whether it's data centers, warehousing, co-working, co-living, and any other trends that you see, as upcoming trends for development within these cities?
One thing is, my data shows that Jaipur has much bigger size in terms of the projects also, and in terms of the sales and unsold stock. So it's almost 2x of the size of the Chandigarh, in a sense, like we have got 250 odd projects in Jaipur. We have got close to 27,000 units unsold stocks, and then we have close to 7,000 to 8,000 unit getting sold in a year's times, while your Chandigarh is almost half of it in that particular sense. And that's largely because the population size and the urban agglomerations spread itself is much bigger in the Chandigarh in comparison to Tri-City of Chandigarh, in the Jaipur in comparison to Tri-City, this thing. I have seen over a period of time, like, the way my other panelists mentioned about the industrializations, which is taking at a fast pace in Jaipur area. So that is something which is emerging in that particular sense. And the way I see going forward, we see a demand for warehousing, as well. We also see the demand for the commercial office spaces may also emerge, largely because a lot of people, they migrate from these cities to the large cities. And since remote working is now going to be a reality, I see some of these companies may open or may show the demand for the commercial office in these cities, where these cities will be working as a spoke offices for some of these large multinationals and other places. So I see warehousing as well as commercial office spaces. These are the two segments which is emerging. Secondly, I see the India retail sites, like, the penetration is still way too low. I see you may see going forward couple of malls and organized retail also moving into the tier 2 cities. And I see these two market seems to be quite poised for such kind of thing. Chandigarh already has got couple of malls, but Jaipur, I think the large big mall is likely to come in the near future, and it has the population, it has the dynamics, every single thing. A couple of things which I wanted to see, because just before this I was just doing the search. Chandigarh stands for ranks number 4th in terms of per capita GDP in India. So affluency's point of view, this particular market really certainly has the people have got purchasing power, and that's basic reason why the land rates could be very high and why the bigger size of the homes really getting sold in that sense. But when it comes to Jaipur, it is quite a homogeneous, and we have seen affordable housing which is driving this particular market, not only by virtue of what builder supplies is, but also by virtue of all the initiative the state government has also taken, even the state level incentives which they have brought in. So EWS, affordable housing, and many other kind of assets class, I see Jaipur site is growing. Chandigarh and other sense, I see prices being higher. That's maybe a reason why it is lesser productive in terms of the volumes. So I would say that even though Ankita may mentions that there are more tractions in the Chandigarh sites, but as far as the size of the market and the residential real estate contributions, if you were to see that, I see Jaipur is doing much better than Chandigarh.
Akshay, yeah.
I just want to add here, I agree with you, Pankaj. So when we are just talking about the search and discovery, so taking a step back, just preempting of the potential demand, the actuals will definitely be different from probably, how the online trends would be as of now, but they might pan out in future.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Ankita. I mean, of course, I mean, we're not saying, I think both of you are on the same page on that. Actually, I mean, you mentioned about the opportunity, of course, in the tri-state area. There was also talk between Pankaj and Ankita, and I have also mentioned that there are a lot of drivers, both from a policy perspective as well as infrastructure development. But what is your wish list? What other things need to be done, both from a development as well as from a policy perspective, that can further accelerate the opportunity set for that region?
Sure. So before that, I would like to add Ankita and Pankaj, according to a recent survey done by the local authorities and also quoted in Financial Express, the current unsold inventory of Tri-City stands at 2.5 lakh units, which accumulates to much, much, much bigger than what is emptied, in other publications or from their knowledge. So when you have an unsold inventory of 2.5 lakh, and also the number of registered projects till 15th October 2020 stand at 952 in the Tri-City area. And a lot of them are obviously getting completed on the verge of completion and are going to be completed in the next 4 to 5 years. There's one trend that I have recently observed. So there were 4 to 5 companies wanting to shift from Gurgaon to Zirakpur, actually, because the rents in Gurgaon are much higher, and Zirakpur being a satellite city to Chandigarh area, which obviously has its own perks. So the trends are that people are actually shifting to the Tri-City belt to get into the technology drive that's happening there. It's becoming an IT hub. So obviously, though, no comparisons with any other city, but every city has its growth trajectory, and Chandigarh is one space that has to be looked out for. In terms of policies that you said, recently many policies that the Credai Punjab and our local chapter of Naredco were battling for, we got that. One of them was reducing the affordable township criteria from 50 to 25 acres. So how in Haryana you have the affordable colonies that can be carved out in any form of land, they were reduced to, I think, 10 acres in for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana in Haryana. It has been reduced to 25 acres in Punjab belt. And since there's a lot of commercialization happening, and Griha and the green company norms were applying to many developers, and they want to take extra FAR for that. So we've got a 10% FAR approved if we fall in the highest category, which is the platinum of course, the category. So yeah, there are some policies which are still on ground, need to be worked upon. Like the highway corridor, the GT Canal Road corridor, which passes through Chandigarh. We need to get that done, as quickly as possible, because it's been 7 to 8 years now. I believe it's with Welspun. It was with I'm not sure. I think it was with Z, then the infrastructure arm, and now it is with Wellspun. So going forward, that will be completed in the next 12 months to 18 months. There is RRTS, which is the Rapid Rail Transit System, which will connect Delhi to Chandigarh in span of I think 2 hours. There's also another highway coming up, which is Delhi Chandigarh Katra highway, which is supposed to be completed by 25, 26, I believe. So there are these infrastructural developments that are happening. So as Mr. Poddar mentioned that the corridor of Delhi Bombay is going through Jaipur, it has a layover there. So these obviously these developments do help the overall landscape of the city, and they tend to get more attraction to the city.
Fantastic, Akshay. I think you've really laid it out really well in terms of what has happened from a policy perspective, given your engagement with the agencies, as well as the infrastructure development road being a very important aspect of that. Uddhav, any other such wish for you when it comes to Rajasthan in terms of policy as well as infrastructure that still needs to get done very quickly to further the potential of Rajasthan? Of course, Pankaj mentioned how Jaipur is a very large development potential zone. What is it that you think needs to get done?
I think overall the government is quite supportive to the real estate sector, and they've made a lot of changes in the last last 2-3 years, like Mr. Kapoor had mentioned. But there are a couple of issues which require attention. One is conversion of land use in Jaipur or in Rajasthan right now is very, very difficult. It takes 2 years, 3 years, because there is some high court stay due to which land generally cannot be converted unless it's approved in the master plan, and the new master plan is awaited. So that's what is keeping a lot of good land parcels available for development. So good large land parcels within the city are not available. That's the big challenge. You have to go outside the city. Although city land might be available, but because it can't get converted, it can't be developed. So that's one big bottleneck that we're all facing, especially in Jaipur. Also, I'll say, of course, the metro. There is a metro in Jaipur, but it's in very, very limited areas. So the metro expansion would really help because it goes only on a particular corridor. Once the metro really goes all over the city is when it has its impact. So that's what we would look for the government to do. And the airport, although it has a lot of flights going out of Jaipur, is very, very inadequate. We see large queues at the airport, inside, outside, every day. And it's a clear bottleneck. So the government has to do something about it in the airport expansion. Although it's gone to Adani recently, but there is no real expansion activity which has taken place. It's just a change of hand which has happened over there. The other thing I would say is I'd love to invite large national players to Jaipur because the level of the development has to go up. And that will only happen once people who are doing development in large cities like Delhi, Bombay, or other parts of the country come and do A-grade development in Jaipur and Rajasthan.
We would love to be there, Uddhav.
Anytime. We should connect.
No, actually, absolutely right. Coming to the next question in terms of investment opportunities, because Uddhav mentioned that there is limited institutional play, and of course, with maybe if TDI is going to go, maybe there'll be capital also following TDI. But which are the big block things where you see big amount of global capital being deployed, or is it still more a localized place? It's still those little opportunities to do a small development here, another warehouse there, a small hospitality play there, or is it ready, or any of these cities ready to take on, let's say, $1 billion? And I think that's the first question that anybody asks, that, okay, fine, we are the top 10 cities, can you actually take $1 billion? And usually the answer has been no, because we talked about how developments are smallish in Chandigarh, looking at global scale. I'm not saying they're small by any measure, but I mean, obviously, can you do 5 million square feet development anytime soon in any of these cities? And of course, we've seen the history of Mahindra SEZ. It's taken over 10 years for it to stabilize, and obviously the work started much before. So, that's one quick question, Pankaj. I'll ask you first. Is, do you see a large, because you obviously study investment trends as well, and not just the the development trends, and you've seen how large capital has walked into the country. What is it that is required, or is it even possible for these cities to invite the global big boys to play these cities?
Mostly what happens is that large investment requires large parcel of the land, and large parcel of land is generally the outskirts, and outskirts really sometimes you find that there's not enough demand interactability, so the gestation period increases. And the way the funds houses have burned their fingers earlier, it really suggests there is an investment opportunity, but do you have an investment opportunity to put in one project's 1 billion, or maybe investment opportunities are available, but they require a smaller quantums and multiple projects to reach to 1 billion numbers, because you may probably have to work on to the smaller parcels, because based on the demand interactability at the local level, the investment can really take place. Most of the places where the big ticket size investment has taken place are the one where the land prices have been very, very high. That is where large absorptions of the investment takes place, and that's where it has been mostly Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, or Delhi. Beyond that, when you go, the market size itself is low, so you don't have enough consumers. In comparison to MMR, Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad, when you go to the smaller cities like Jaipur and Chandigarh, the annual absorptions really dips quite a lot, although they are doing and they are among the top 10 cities. But the gradations of the drop in terms of comparative volumes is way too low, and that's where it gets restricted to can you do one investment, maybe in the hospitality sector, maybe in the retail sectors, maybe in the commercial sector, but we have seen certain fiasco also. You have mentioned about Mahindra SEZs. They acquired, but there is a long gestation which is there, and that's what has been a restrictive nature. In past, the people had the exuberance and they thought about urbanization is taking place, and then the city will grow and then everything will get absorbed and things like it. But it didn't really happen. On the true sense of productions, I think the smaller cities probably have a potential for multiple investment of the smaller size rather than one big.
Akshay, do you agree with that? Do you think that with your, you've seen, large developments, of course, you've seen the tri-state area also being sold at very high values. Do you think there's potential for global partnership and investments to happen within the tri-state city area?
Well, I would just say one thing here, which will sum up the answer, that God loves irony. And how we say that they are tier 2 and tier 3 cities, but they are now the power hubs of growth. Be it $500 million today or $1 billion, maybe 4-5 years down the line, but it will come.
Wonderful, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, 1 billion is just an anecdotal number. Clearly, ideas to see whether we can partner with the global majors, given the liquidity surplus in the world. And clearly, it's looking to find its way into our country as well. We've seen enough money walk into capital markets, with large-scale tie-ups with developers for multiple developments, right from greenfield to multiple asset classes, whether it's warehousing or data centers. And so clearly, we'd like to see that opportunity also for Jaipur and Chandigarh. We've seen one large SEZ, which is obviously a very mega development, but we'd like to obviously see an integrated development maybe also come up into the cities.
Also coming, be it Jaipur or Chandigarh, like Vedanta is backed by retail investors.
Right.
All is backed by retail investors. The Virtuous Real. So there are many, if the list goes on and on, who are scouting such places. Now, whoever is a retail investor, they're very cautious because they actually have loads and loads of investors backing them up, and they have to go and present the 5 to 10 year long return plan on their money. So they also take 2 to 3 years to scout where and how and when to invest. But scouting is the first step, which has already taken place, and it's we are in the midst of it right now. So all retail investors, be in Tri-City, and I'm sure in Jaipur too. I'm not sure of Jaipur, but yes, in Tri-City, I'm sure that they are scouting for projects there.
Uddhav, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Similar to Akshay, what Akshay is saying. For retail, we see a lot of, of course, Chandigarh has a Blackstone asset and a Xander asset. But even Jaipur, they're all scouting. Blackstone, Warburg, Xander, and some of the large national developers for retail, like the Phoenix and Lulus. They have been scouting for land opportunities. But like I said earlier, there are no large land parcels available within the city, which is what is restraining that large investment. We are seeing action in the warehousing space though. We are seeing a lot of FDI money coming into warehousing, and maybe you'll see some announcements soon. But yeah, I can see a lot of action happening on that front.
Absolutely right, and I'm aware of the investments that these people have made on the warehousing front or the retail front, and clearly there's a great amount of demand for these big block assets. In fact, a lot of the warehousing assets held by family offices are being are being bid for as we speak by some of these major global funds. So clearly huge opportunity.
Some by you as
in
well.
Jaipur. Sorry.
Some are backed by you as well, I believe.
You keep yourself updated, Akshay, on investment
Yeah.
on investment interest. So yes, of course, we've obviously moved away from not just looking at the 4 or 5 metropolis regions in the country, but we've also started investing into these opportunities across the spectrum, including affordable housing and commercial development. And you're right about that. Actually, I mean, today, if you look at it from a global perspective, and we are obviously now looking at global capital partnerships as well for ourselves. We've seen a lot of interest for stable income yielding assets across the country, and in fact, the interest for tier two cities, including for Jaipur and Chandigarh. And I think it will be somehow a misfit. I think by 2025 to call them tier two cities. I think they're actually metro locations today in their own right, with the GDP, with the development, with the kind of high quality, high skill developments that we're seeing in these cities. It would be a misfit to call them tier two. They are actually mega cities already. I think I'll take a last question for the panel, and then obviously we'll ask Sapna if there are any questions for from the audience or from the organizers. One, if you were to choose between Jaipur and Chandigarh, and if you have to choose, I mean, you don't have to, but if you choose, would you choose one of them? Second is, would you, I mean, just because you're talking of Chandigarh and Jaipur, but you're not necessarily there. Akshay, you're there in other parts of NCR as well. What is it that you would prefer? Would you prefer putting more money in a Gurgaon, Noida, which are already, well developed, or would you continue to focus on places like Jaipur or the Tri-City area? So is it, just to sort of, try and question Pankaj's hypothesis that the growth trajectory is more in emerging destinations. So do you agree with that? Is that where you're going to put your money, or would you first continue to put bulk of your money into the Gurgaons, Noidas, and other parts of the country?
See, I want to give a very unbiased answer, and that's why I want to lay it out before saying anything. That Uddhav really dwelled on the political stability of a state really has a direct effect on the real estate of the area.
Right.
Talk about Haryana, I have burnt my fingers. I have a big project on the National Highway 1, which was first stirred down because of the Jat protest and the current the farmer scenario. I'm not taking any sides who is right or wrong.
Of course.
But yes, from an investor point of view, from a retailer, from a commercial developer, from having hospitality, education, and different interests there, it does affect your real estate business. So I think when you're close to NCR, because all these, the bottleneck becomes NCR. It is naturally the place of protest. It is the podium. It is the biggest stage in the country where you come to express your grief. So many protests have shaken the landscape from the UP side, from the lower Haryana side, from the northern Haryana, northern Delhi side. So being and current situation of the political scenario, the polity in the country is ever growing. I would not use any other word. It's ever growing, and it will take about I think 1 or maybe 2 more terms to have it settle down. And being in Punjab and being in Rajasthan, there is a very politically stable government. So I will be unbiased and place my bets on these 2 cities rather than coming into Gurgaon or Noida or somewhere in proximity of Delhi. I think Jaipur and Chandigarh are better bets to place.
That's a brilliant answer, Ankita. Two bits from you.
So Gurgaon is where I work, right? I hail from Shimla. So Chandigarh, obviously very close to my heart. I recently was in Mohali, and the kind of development that's coming around that area, the buzz, the airport road, the developers who've taken space, I would bet on Tri-City. And there too, I would not move towards the Zirpur side. It just became a little unplanned, but definitely placing my bet on Chandigarh and Mohali.
Pankaj, 2 bits from you.
I can't really bet on cities. It's more to do with the deal, and it's more to do with the value of that particular deal and things like it.
As investors, you have to bet on cities, and Pankaj, you have to make a choice.
Yeah, you know, if I were to go and live in a place, I would consider Chandigarh over, because it's more planned and it has been designed well, and well-planned cities, more open areas and things like amenities, every other things, and lesser populations. While like, you know, Jaipur actually requires good amount of planning, and it's a complex city because it has a floating population base, it has a big economy, it has got old history. So, you know, correcting itself is going to really take much long time. So for the investment, for retail and hospitalities, for consumerism, the Jaipur is bigger, but not for living.
Understood. And final word from you, Uddhav.
For me, Amit, I'm very close to Rajasthan. So one is that, and the other is, I think, the opportunity. Like I said earlier, because there are no national players, there are no large players in Jaipur, and the population is big, demography is big. So as a developer, the opportunity is very, very large because the competition is less, and the IRR is very, very good. Land rates are not as high as other parts of the country. So the opportunity-wise, if you ask me as a developer, I would bet on Jaipur.
Got it. Perfect. Sapna, I think we've had some exciting and very, very deep insights into these cities. I mean, I wasn't aware of the kind of things that we've heard today from our panelists, especially because of their personal engagement, and some of them also being emotional engagements with some of these regions. So I think it's fantastic that we've got some very deep insights. Are there any questions before I sum up? I haven't summed up
That's
the.
right. Yeah, very good insights. But before we go on to the question, you did try to create a kind of a competition, environment of competition between the cities. And
But you set up the tone between Noida and Gurgaon, so I had to only take the cue. I'm not at fault.
So, how do you sum up? Before we go on to the questions, how would you like to sum up this entire session?
No, certainly. I think it was an exciting session where I think Pankaj clearly laid down the fact that Jaipur is a very large development zone, which has got over 300 projects, very large amount of developments, and therefore also is effectively an impetus for multifaceted development, whether it comes to warehousing, whether it comes to SEZ, whether it comes to large affordable housing or hospitality projects. On the other side, Chandigarh lends itself. What Akshay really brought out very clearly is that Chandigarh lends itself to value rather than volume. So great value creation happening in the tri-city, especially with the development of new hospitality, education, manufacturing, and other sectors which are coming up in a very big way, which are causing drivers of growth, as well as land therefore being appreciated, and value being created, new developments and new value developments actually happening rather than volume developments, which is obviously keeping him rooted and and rooting for the region. We had views from Uddhav, which obviously talked about hospitality being a key driver. And of course, we've seen leisure travel come back with a very, very big bang across the country, very big bang. So clearly, both these cities, including Jaipur and the surrounding cities of Jaipur, offering themselves to large hospitality type of developments, including studio or other service apartment kind of concepts, which are unheard of in these cities, but again, coming back in a big way. We've seen one of the largest things being mentioned by both Akshay and Uddhav being the fact that policy is a major driver. We've had some political stability, and policy stability needs to be done more. Of course, the things about policy already being implemented being one of the major factors, whether it's the PMAY, the Amrut, or some of the other policy initiatives actually being very, very good. But the fact that the government is very reciprocative, both on the affordable housing and other infrastructure developments, obviously being one of the major drivers. Jaipur still needing work on the airport side. Chandigarh International Airport doing really well, and the growth being one of the being driven out of the airport. We've had views from Ankita in terms of the search being clearly indicating that there is a demand for large scale housing, as well as value housing or luxury housing in these cities. The fact that there is good infrastructure development in these cities, and it's clearly demand, the drivers being coming out of the infrastructure development being seen in both these cities. So clearly, I think we've seen the fact that from all our panelists that both these cities now post-pandemic showing a very, very strong, resilient trajectory, both in terms of development, in terms of demand, as well as value appreciation and creation of new asset classes. So what we knew of these cities necessarily is not what we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to see a very, very new outlook for these cities, which is why it's going to become one of the major mega investment destinations with institutional developers and investors including the likes of TDI, actually going out and making a mark with these cities and not just limiting themselves to the major cities of NCR. So with that, I think we've had an exciting panel, very, very deep insights and research coming our way for both these cities. Sapna, so that is all from my side.
I think that was a wonderful sum up, and most of the questions that we received did get covered in the discussion. And a lot of comments that we have received, they have also mentioned that 2022 will be the year of real estate in tier 2 cities. What a lot of people have mentioned. One question that I like to take with all our speakers, including Amit, what are the top 2 factors that are going to shape the real estate of tier 2 cities going forward? So top 2 factors, Amit, starting from you.
So for me, Sapna, the first one, which I think to some extent Uddhav alluded, is the presence of institutional players. I think capital needs good counterparties, and most tier 2 cities have suffered local uh, or very, very localized players, which don't have the framework to deal with institutional capital. I think that's the first thing. And of course, now institutional capital comes with, added baggage and added bells and whistles, like ESG being a big thing. Do you understand ESG? Do you understand? So Akshay talked about, Gruha or green building or LEED platinum rated building. So local players have very, 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 very specific local nuances, which institutional investors don't understand or can appreciate. So I think that for me is one constraint. The second constraint is the entire implementation of the regulatory policies, whether it's RERA, whether it's the entire judicial or regulatory process. I think that's a little out of whack. We don't understand it so much because we see a lot of nuances when it comes to implementation of simple regulatory policies, or even understanding the master plan.
Compliances and the global standards in the
Absolutely. I think
development.
so. For us, a great counterparty and a stable, strong regulatory, body and regime, with stable policies, I think is very
Actually,
important.
what do
As
you
well
have
as
to
the
say?
as well as the transparency. I mean, we can't deal with something which is not, fully on the books. A lot of people say, "Sir, books pe nahi hai, magar paisa hai." I don't understand that, so we can't deal with that. So that's from my side.
So transparency, global standards of
Yeah.
development, and compliances, regulatory
Yeah.
compliances. Akshay, what according to you are the top 2 factors that will shape the real estate of tier 2 cities?
Well, for me, the top 2 factors, which we see in bits and pieces, but very few are able to match the trend and catch on to the right of that, is one is sustainability, and the second is the a part of, like, you can call it green living. Sustained development and green living are the 2 factors which are going to come first in tier 2 cities. So if you see, for the past 5 years, the cleanest city in India has been Indore. I think the survey came out last week again. Delhi and Bombay and tier 1 cities are far away from that because of the size of population and commercialization, and 35% of India's population lives in the tier 1 cities. So there is it's a far off aim and a very ambitious goal to have these cities been rated in the less polluted cities or more cleaner cities. Whereas if you talk about tier 2 cities, as Amit mentioned, that Chandigarh is much more planned, and these cities have they have a easier way of reaching their targets of being sustainable and a greener environment. I wouldn't have my third generation family, my grandparents live in Delhi when the pollution level rises, or when the pandemic happened, people want to leave Delhi. They want to go to Chandigarh. They want to go to far off cities from Delhi where the population is less, so they have a cleaner, green environment to live in.
I believe the livability quotient of tier 2 cities, which is going to
you
be
summed
the
it up.
determining factor for tier 2 cities. Fantastic. Mr. Poddar, what according to you would be the 2 factors?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, the political ecosystem and stability, I think, is very important for any investor. So that is very, very important. And of course, infrastructure comes with that. If there is a stable government in power and with good policies, they will invest in infrastructure, which of course matters in a tier 2 town. And like Amit mentioned, and I had also mentioned earlier, is the presence of national players. Even if you want to move to a smaller town, if you're from Delhi or Bombay, you would want to buy a house, developed by a Godrej or a national player. You just have that comfort. So I think that so the presence of national players also ups the game in the local market. So I think that's important. that
Right.
the large national players are.
Once we
present
start
in that.
having, the national players coming into which we are already seeing a lot of national players now are looking at tier 2 cities, to foray in those regions. And political stability and infrastructure development that follows the stability is what Mr. Uddhav Poddar is saying, going to be the determining factors for the tier 2 cities. Pankaj, over to you. What do you think would be the 2 factors? And then Ankita.
Good plans, policies, and political stabilities. I think these are the 3 very important factors for it. You're seeing the similar manner, the way some of the states have really laid down their promising plan, whether it's a Jaipur airport or any other thing. So investment is driven by a promised plan, and so I think both the states have to really look forward, and that is where the polarization will take place. And one thing very sure is that political stability is, if you don't...
Similar views, political stability, development plans and policies is what is going to take these cities forward. Ankita, your last inputs.
I'll take from where Uddhav left. When you say national players, now national players will take place when there is demand. How will the demand come? When people are there. So these cities now, with reverse migration, the work from home tendencies, people went back home, right? So the aspirations that they had in the tier 1 cities, they are looking for the same thing in the emerging or the tier 2 cities. So consumption across sectors will actually lead to the ripple effect. And yes, so, these cities are poised for greater growth.
So rising consumption and the need for, the similar properties as in metros is what is going to drive the real estate of these cities. So thank you so much. This was one of the very insightful sessions, I must say, and we got to know so much about these cities, especially Chandigarh and Rajasthan and Udaipur and places like Mohali. So thank you so much, Amit, for conducting this session, and Ms. Pankaj Kapoor, Mr. Uddhav Poddar, and Mr. Akshay Taneja, bringing those nuances of the region to us and our audience, and Ankita joining us and sharing your views and opinions. Thank you so much for this wonderful session.
Thank you, Sapna ji.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.